Backseat Positivity, where I teach you to be the best version of you. Sounds kind of cringy, and that's because it is. As a human, as a person, have struggled with anxiety a lot of my life, especially my adult life, and I was too scared to tell anybody. I think it was like admitting defeat, maybe, but then when I started sharing, gal didn't stop, and it's great. It's so cathartic. It's like when you do that thing you've been procrastinating for like 3 weeks, and then you finally do it, and you're like, why didn't I do this sooner? This is the best thing ever. And then you're like, wow, I'm just gonna get more things done because now I feel great. But alas, we move on. Some people have comfort movies or TV shows. Mine is Friends and Harry Potter. If I'm sad or hungover or having a shit time or really anxious, I just watch Friends. Hello guys, and welcome back to my podcast, Backseat Positivity, where I teach you to be the best version of you. Sounds kind of cringy, and that's because it is. Today I'm giving you my 3 very, very simple tips for anxiety sufferers. As a human, as a person, have struggled with anxiety a lot of my life, especially my adult life, my young, teenage or young 20s life. And I would say it kind of ruled my life and ruined it. So today I wanted to share what I've learned over those 10 years and give it to you as a gift. So let's start off with number 1. Let's just get straight into it. We don't need to fuck about, do we, today? No. Number 1, find your triggers. I am going to bet a lot of money that you already know what anxiety feels like to you. For me, it feels like sometimes like a fluttery feeling in my chest, or like that sinking feeling, or sometimes a funny feeling in my stomach, or sometimes I get this thing where I breathe really shallowly and rapidly, and it my throat ends up hurting. I don't know how else to explain it. There are a lot of physical symptoms of anxiety, and a lot of people can think, oh, I have something physically wrong with me because I have physical symptoms. That's not necessarily the case. A lot of my anxiety, I can tell I'm anxious because of my physical symptoms. So you don't necessarily need to be like in my head to be anxious, although that is what's going on in your head. But me in particular, I'm very good at suppressing it. I'm like, no, everything's fine. And then in my body is then suffering the consequences of that. I don't know how it works. Cortisol, hormones, adrenaline, etc. So you already know what your symptoms are, whether they're physical, whether you can just feel it in your brain, if you get what I mean, in your thoughts, in your thought patterns. I would say over time, my thought patterns have gotten less. Like I have less anxious thoughts, but I have more physical anxiety feelings. For some of you, it might be chest pain or abdominal pain. I don't really get pain. I get more of like a weird feeling. So I think it's just recognizing what are your symptoms and what's triggering them. For me in particular, not having enough sleep is a big one. I don't know what, it just does something to me. It's a bad time. Alcohol is another one. I only have to have 1 drink, and then the next day I just don't feel right. And that might be because I haven't slept very well as well. So some people, it's what they eat. If you drink too many coffees, there are triggers. But I also want to point out that sometimes there just aren't triggers, and sometimes you just have this impending sense of doom and you don't really know why, and you're kind of trying to find a reason. Let that go. If the reason comes to you, the reason comes to you. But sometimes it doesn't, and we can get more and more anxious trying to find a reason and trying to solve it and being like, how can I get rid of this anxiety? Because if I don't have a reason, then I can't get rid of it. But sometimes that just causes more stress. I think I want to stress the importance of then reducing your triggers. So if for me, like I said, if alcohol makes me anxious, then stop drinking so much alcohol or drink it less frequently. And that's helped me so much. I mean, I used to drink, I don't want to say a lot, but student levels of drinking, which is a lot. And as soon as I just cut down my drinking, I didn't drink every week. It's every month now, or I just drink less. And it's helped me so much. But sometimes it's not a trigger like, oh, I haven't had enough sleep, or I've drunk something, I've drunk alcohol. Sometimes it's a situation that might make you anxious. I want to point out that just because, there are certain situations that you don't want to get involved in, right? If you're hanging around with a gang and that makes you anxious, get rid of it. But if like going outside makes you anxious, then just reducing your triggers, in inverted commas, is not going to help you, because you kind of need to go outside to live life. So you don't want to start avoiding your problems, avoiding your anxiety triggers. So it's like you need to try and remove the stuff that is negative and the stuff that you don't need to live your life. You don't need to drink to like live your life, but you do need to go outside. You do need to go and see friends. You might need to go to public crowded places on occasion, and it's all about learning what can you realistically reduce rather than what are you trying to avoid, because you don't want to you just don't want to start avoiding things, which I am a common avoider, so I know this. As soon as you start avoiding things, especially when it's anxiety related, it's not just like, oh, I just don't want to do it. The anxiety gets more and more and more, and then you just don't want to do it more. So it becomes a vicious cycle. You don't want to start getting into that, trust me. Sometimes your anxiety is already bad enough that you can't actually do, like, let's say go outside as an example. Now, that is where, and let's move on to the second one. We're whizzing through these today. That is where you're going to need to think about altering your thought pattern. And the ways you can do that are either by talking to friends, family, just sharing a problem. If you share a problem, it's halved. It is. And you'll also find out they probably have that problem too. And then you feel great because you're like, oh, you don't like going outside either. Now I feel better because I feel less like a weirdo. And I think one of my biggest problems as a young 20-year-old was the fact that I would never, ever tell people how I was feeling. And I held it up inside. And this is kind of one of the reasons for starting my podcast. You don't need to go and start a podcast, right? But it is kind of one of the reasons, because I felt so isolated in my own head. I felt like I was the only person that was feeling this way, and I was too scared to tell anybody. I think it was like admitting defeat, maybe, but then when I started sharing, gal didn't stop. And it's great. It's like, it's so cathartic. It just releases it from you. It's like when you do that thing you've been procrastinating for like 3 weeks, and then you finally do it and you're like, shit, why didn't I do this sooner? This is the best thing ever. And then you're like, wow, I'm just going to get more things done because now I feel great. It's the same with sharing. And I used to have this fear of being like, oh my God, I'm going to overshare. I'm going to tell people too much. And maybe you do that at the beginning, and maybe it's not such a problem, because maybe people it just doesn't matter. And then you start realizing it just doesn't matter. And that is how you start changing your thought pattern. I used to have a very anxious thought pattern. My anxiety used to revolve around how people thought of me, if that makes sense. What people thought of me. I used to be like, oh my God, I said that in a bad way. Oh, I shouldn't have said it like that. Or, I said the wrong word and now they hate me. And oh my God, they're all ganging up on me and no one wants to be my friend. And it would all like cycle round like that. And in reality, it was really not like that at all. And it was only by talking through those problems with, a CBT therapist or just a therapist, or, just becoming a bit more like relaxed about the situation, because I'd just aired it all out and I talked about it all and I'd learnt ways to like manage those thoughts. That was the kind of only way. And I would say maybe antidepressants helped, and also a bit of age. those were the only ways that I managed to get through my especially negative thoughts. They were so bad, and they were constant. And there are other ways, the general point here is just changing your thought pattern, or trying to make moves towards changing it. And that might be through therapy, that might be through journaling, that might be through mindfulness, that might be through talking to people. There are lots of different ways of doing it, but the outcome is still the same. Just trying to change your thought pattern to not being like overthinking things, negative, and it's all often driven within you. I mean, there are some people that are weird and going to make you anxious. There are some people that are not nice and are going to make you anxious, and that's fine. But how do you distinguish between situations that are kind of benign, normal, fine, not dangerous, that make you anxious, and situations that you shouldn't be in, or that would make anybody anxious, and getting out of those? Because then you just end up getting out of all situations, and then you're just on your own, and that's a bad time. So I remember my first therapy session. I used to just be like always like running around, always like doing stuff, like not giving myself enough time to like get between places, and I would just be running everywhere. And I remember running into the therapist's room. This was like when I was a medical student. They gave us like free therapy. That's quite hard to say. And I remember like running in there, and then the last session I only had 6, because often it's capped. I only had 6, and the last session I walked in there, and it was just like, she was like, wow, there was just such a, I even remember it myself. There was such a difference between me running in there, like panting, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm late. It was just a completely different physical demeanour. And obviously I'm just so much more chill now. But it was like, how did I get there? And I do think I've had a lot of therapy, let me put it that way. And I do not say that as like a bad thing on myself. That's like, Gal needed it, and Gal did it. And some people do. And, some people are of that maybe more anxious predisposition. And some people are just more chilled. And some people just need more help. And I was one of them. I have a feeling the first half of that video is going to be really overexposed. But alas, we move on. And my third, oh my God. I might be getting through this too quickly. Oh dear. Okay. I was trying to, firstly, I'm quite tired. I'm not going to lie. I've left it too late. I had a day at work, and then I was like, oh shit. And I thought it would be fine. And guess what? It's not. So as in, I thought I'd be fine, and I thought I'd be like, yeah, let's go for it after my work at 7 p.m. And I got home, and then I just laid there and watched Netflix, story of my life, and ate Belvita, and then I had to listen to a presentation that Tom was doing. So it's now 11 p.m. So I have regrets. I don't have regrets, because when else would I have done it? I could have done it yesterday, TBH, but I thought it would be fine. Anyway, my last point. Can't believe I'm on the last point, but look, it's a short boy today. It's a mini pod, just a pod, not podcast. It's a pod. My last point is not only finding triggers and reducing them, but also finding things that make you happy, and finding things that give you comfort and enhancing those. Now, I'm not saying, if chocolate makes you happy and brings you comfort and, makes you have a good time, I'm not saying eat chocolate all day, every day, but enjoying those moments that you do eat chocolate, because sometimes I need some chocolate and it makes me fucking happy. That is saved for the particularly anxious days that sometimes happen, often around my period. That is a trigger that I can't avoid. I just can't. And I recently went to a festival on my own. Bad decision. Very, very anxiety provoking, which I didn't really expect. I kind of thought, oh, maybe I'll be like a little bit lonely, but I'll find friends and it'll be fine. No, it wasn't the case. It was I just felt anxious a lot of the time. And it might be because I hadn't slept. It also probably because I was drinking. And it was also because I was on my own. So I won't be doing that again. And it's something to try, you know, you got to try these things. You got to just do it and then be like, well, that didn't work, did it? And trust me, I wanted to leave, but I was like, no, come on, Dawn, push through the pain. And I managed it. So I did a whole episode on that, by the way. If you do want to go and listen to my torturous tales of a festival lady, then it's a couple of episodes back, and it's a long boy. So you can go from a little short boy to a long boy and listen to me for extra long time. So what I did when I was at the festival on my own, of course I drank my sorrows away. Not advisable, but sometimes, you know, you're at a festival, you're going to drink, okay? So I don't drink my sorrows away on a normal day-to-day basis. But I found, so what I did before I left was, because I thought I'd have no signal or any 4G or anything, I downloaded loads of Netflix episodes and I had a great time. Like, it was my comfort food. Like, there wasn't really any comfort stuff there. You're in a tent. I had a nice little sleeping bag. That was so cozy. Like, it was quite warm, but I loved it. Like, when I was in my tent and the rain, sometimes the rain was like dropping down on the roof of the tent and I was there in my sleeping bag. That is another thing that makes me really, like, gets rid of my anxiety. And some people have these as weighted blankets. I don't necessarily need it weighted, but I just want to be encased in cloth. And my dressing gown is a good one, blankets, or the sleeping bag is also a good one. And I found the weighted blanket kind of hard work. Like, I couldn't move when it was on me. I was like, like, it was really, I think I led under a particularly heavy one, but it was like really heavy and I just wasn't used to it. I'm used to like blanket that weighs nothing. So, and I'm quite happy with blanket that weighs nothing. I don't need literally 10 kilos on my body. So, I mean, it was great for my abs probably, but I don't think it was my thing. But I'm sure you can get different weighted ones. Like, maybe you can get lighter ones. Anyway, some people, that might be their comfort, but for me it wasn't. But like I said, I was at the festival and I was lying on my blow up mattress, and I was in my sleeping bag and in my PJs, just having a great time, literally having a great time, because I was in my tent. And it didn't matter. I had Netflix, I had my sleeping bag, and I was encased in a tent. And I felt like it was just, I think what happens is when you're at a festival on your own, you can just go sit outside your tent, but then you're kind of just sat there on your own, like, and there's only so long you can kind of do that for. And other people are like socialising and you're just like, cool. Like, it's fine if your neighbours like talk to you, but my neighbours kind of didn't. And I was like, they did, but like not, it wasn't like an involved thing. It was like I was in my camp and they were in theirs, and it was like a separate thing. So I opted to just lie in my tent, and not all day, like until like 2 p.m. And I think that's reasonable, you know, whatever. You don't need to be up at 10 a.m. at a festival. Like, who is doing that? Especially with my neighbours being as noisy as they were. So they kept me awake until like 7. So anyway, I would be in my tent and I would have Netflix on, and it was so great. I just felt like I was at home. And it was great. And then I would be like, okay, I'm ready to go out now. I'm ready to get ready. And I would get ready whilst watching Netflix. And maybe it was a distraction thing, you know, maybe I was just like, how can I distract my mind from the terror that awaits? But also, I think it was like, maybe I was like with people. I don't know. It was just comforting. Another thing that comforts me is cuddling my doggies, or being with them, or stroking them. Or being with animals, just generally like fluffy animals, not like reptiles. And I mean, I'm sure you know what your things are what your comfort things are. Some people have comfort food. Some people have like noises or a song. Some people have comfort movies or TV shows. Mine is Friends and Harry Potter. If I'm sad or hungover or having a shit time or really anxious, I just watch Friends. It's easy to watch. I know what's going on. I don't need to pay attention completely. And I can just have it on in the background and I can dip in and out. And I know it. Do you know what I mean? It's like this thing that I'm like, it's familiar to me. So I don't need to worry about like, oh my God, am I not going to like, what's going to happen? Who knows? It's like, no, I know what's going to happen and it's familiar and it makes me feel comfortable. So, and also it's just funny. So you could say the opposite for Harry Potter. It's not really funny. And it's not very relaxing as such, but I know it. I'm familiar with it. It makes me feel safe. I think safety is a real thing, like what makes you feel safe? It might be like having a hug from a person, feeling like encased. And it is that thing, isn't it? Like, people have like weighted blankets, and dogs have like those thunder jackets, and they make you feel safe, like enclosed. And I think that's what my tent did, and my sleeping bag. Whereas when you're just out in the open, you're like, oh God. And some days are going to be worse than others. Most days you'll be fine, probably. But some days, maybe period time, you will feel very anxious. And you just need to look after yourself. Seek out those comforts. And, you could see that as like a negative thing, like, oh, you're just comfort eating, or you're just being in comfortable situations. But I'm sorry, but if you've got anxiety, there's a difference between pushing yourself out your comfort zone and accepting that you have anxiety and respecting it. Like being like, no, okay, I am going to look after myself. And I think some of that is what has happened with age, is I don't really tolerate being in a situation that I don't really like very much anymore. And I think that's not because I don't tolerate it. It's because I don't put up with it. It's like I'm not going to put myself in an uncomfortable situation that makes me really anxious and I don't like, just because I feel like I have to. And I feel like that's why a lot of people probably spend their young 20s or late teenage years with anxiety for many reasons. But you haven't found out who you are, you're hanging out with people that maybe you don't really fuck with, but like they're in your space, like you're there. And then you have to put up with all of these like social dynamics. And as you get older, you start to realize, well, the people that are around you are your choice. And also you don't need to put yourself in these situations that make you uncomfortable. You don't need to drink to have a good time and like drink 4 times a week because you're a student. And I think it's like sometimes I thought, oh, maybe it's because I've just grown up. But actually, yes, it is because I've grown up. But I've just learned that I don't need to put up with other people's shit that makes me feel anxious, and I don't need to put myself in situations that I don't like. So I feel like when you're younger, you just put up with stuff because you feel like you have to. And also sometimes you do have to, if you're in a class with somebody, it's hard to just like be like, nah, I'm gonna leave, because you can't. You're in a class with them, that's it. And yes, you do get that sometimes with people that you work with, but when you work with somebody you don't really like, firstly there's like a professional vibe. When you're younger, it's just like a bit catty, isn't it? But also there's an aspect of when you hang out with people in your class, they're often within a similar social circle. But when you meet people at work, you can go off to a different social circle and just forget about them, and they don't exist anymore. So I think there are a lot of things that change over time. And I was saying to one of my friends the other day, I was like, are you scared about being 30? And she was like, no, because I am so much happier now, even though I'm older. And yes, like we are older, obviously, but like that is a kind of scary thought in itself, but it's not as bad as the anxiety and mental health issues that you have as a younger adult. Like, it really is that bad. And I agree with her. I'm like, I would not want to be in the mental state that I was in my 20s. Like, it was not good. I was anxious all the time. I was, like, I would just put myself in situations that I didn't like. And for what? Anyway, I think those are my 3 tips. Find your triggers and reduce them, but don't avoid them. Alter your thought pattern with CBT, talking therapies, mindfulness, journaling, or talking to friends. And finally, do what makes you happy and find your comforts and enhance them, but not too much that you put on loads of weight and get diabetes, but enough that it makes it a treat. And it's with the comfort thing, but things that make you happy, you don't need to, like, if they're like okay for you, if you're like things that make me happy are going for a walk on the beach, just do that more. If it's good for you or not bad for you, then do it. Like, do it. And you might need to figure out what those things are. You might think it's partying every weekend and then be like, reevaluate your life and go, also it will change over time. But you'll be like, I don't quite like that anymore. It kind of makes me feel like shit for a week. I feel anxious and I have a hangover and I don't feel good and like whatever. So yeah, enhancing your comforts and what makes you happy. Anyway, guys, a tired Dawn is tapping out for the night. I'm pretty fucking dead. It is my fault for leaving it so late, but alas, we live and we learn, or not in my case. The thing is, my issue is I never look tired. Like, do I look tired? Give it a fucking like if I look tired. Because often I don't. Like, my eyes aren't like this and I have like severe bags under my eyes. I look fine. It's a superpower that I have. Like, it is an actual superpower that I look okay. And I kind of wish... I actually kind of like it, but also I would like people to, have a little bit of sympathy for me sometimes, especially at work. But then everyone's tired at work, aren't they? Anyway, thanks so much for listening, guys. I upload every Monday and Thursdays. If you liked it, do give it a like. Share it with your friends, family, anybody who's got anxiety like we do. Or, give it a little rating. 5 stars would be nice, as I always say. 5 stars or nothing, If you didn't like it, then maybe don't bother reviewing it. So, no, I shouldn't be swaying it like that, but that would be preferable. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next week now. Bye.